Hello and welcome back to The Product Experience. This week, Hanneke Hoogewerf, Strategic Experience Designer at Ikea, shares how experience design works with product to ensure the best possible design. We touch on how to design for future technologies and how to make investment decisions on big bets. Hanneke, welcome to The Product Experience.
Thank you.
Podcast. It's so lovely to meet you.
Likewise.
So before we get stuck into our topic today, it'd be great to hear a little bit about what you do and how you got into that space.
Yeah. I'm a strategic experience designer at Ikea, sometimes referred to as business designer as well. We're still figuring it out a little bit. What do we do? It's basically all the way in the beginning of innovation, where we really start exploring trends, business opportunities, to identify sometimes very fluffy spaces. And usually where I then come in is to really help translate that into, aren't actually products yet, but really like call them value propositions, so a bit of North Star vision, articulations of what could the future look like and what could future experiences be. Quite often like feasibility or whether we could do it tomorrow is out of scope, but it's really meant to kind of make strategic decisions based on a business case and a sketched out future, if this could be something that in this case Ikea could see themselves move into and expand their business. How do I get there? I studied industrial design engineering in TU Delft here in the Netherlands. More very much product design, physical product design. And then started my career at Philips and moved to what they call the business. So that's more, it's not a product owner, it's more a business owner. So making the business case, launching the product, physical product at that time still. And I think that kind of business savviness and understanding also a little bit how strategic decisions are made in bigger corporates, together with my design background of what is needed, what is the customer problem, how can we meet needs. That combination for me was really interesting. And at that time moved to, wasn't aware before, but at Philips they had a strategic design team. So started there, worked there for 5 years, was super fun. And then Ikea decided to kind of follow that same structure of integrating design in strategic business decision making. Yeah.
It's really interesting. It's not a term or a business unit that I've heard of before.
No, it's quite rare. I was also quite, when I started talking to Ikea, quite surprised to see another company with exactly that job description that I was doing. And I mean, I love it. It's for me, it's really my passion. And I think the combination is super interesting. So I was very happy to see that Ikea decided to do a similar type of structure and test it out. But you don't see it a lot. No, that's true.
And is it different to innovation, or is it feels like a more focused name for innovation?
Yeah, I think it's a role within innovation. So quite often, I think the design thinking methodologies that you quite often learn in design school also works internally. So for example, a lot of the things that I do and did as a strategic designer is facilitate innovation workshops to really make sure that all the perspective, all the expertise from strategy, business, customer needs, disruptive trends are coming together. So quite often I think I'm almost a bit the glue. As designers, we also never own something, or we don't make the end decisions, but we really help put everything on the table and are good at synthesizing information and making complex narratives very simple so that decisions can be made for innovation. I would say it's more a role within innovation rather than it's something on its own.
Great.
Yeah.
So how do you approach this? Like, how many projects or things do you have on your plate at one time?
It depends a bit. It's quite often how I experience it, a bit of an internal consultancy base. So it's more a mindset that we bring to the table. And sometimes you see, if you work with certain stakeholders for a while, you'll stick there. I see it a bit hoovering into, we quite often talk about creating value propositions. That could be one project, for example, to really solve for a specific question. Sometimes, for example, if we start a new business or a complete new direction, it really becomes a program where if you grow a bit more senior, you're also scoping the work with the business stakeholders and having smaller teams work on the design challenges below. Yeah.
Okay, so you're part of a kind of cross-functional team.
Yeah, it's very much a horizontal functioning.
Yeah. And representing design within that space.
Yeah.
and across physical and digital.
Physical and digital, yes,
So,
definitely.
and how has that been? Because it must be quite a challenge.
It's definitely a challenge. And I think it's also an interesting period where IKEA's in. The whole new group got started because IKEA was, I think a lot of people know it from the physical stores that you go to and you buy a flat pack and you bring it home and you assemble it home. So they were really had something to catch up on and then decided to create this whole digital group that I'm part of now. Yeah, it's very much a combination because I think you're working with a heritage and a brand image that I think almost everyone in this world knows very well. But how to translate that into digital channels as well, I think it's quite often a combination where there's added different touch points, not only store, website, like even be at home. We talked a lot about AR, AI today. I think as a design strategist, what is important to ensure consistency there is to really work with an experience strategy. Sometimes moving a bit into product strategy, we often support there as well. But it can be quite fluffy. But I think if everything is still so to be defined and potentially so far out of the future, I think it's very important to put the end user, the people you design for, at the center of things and to really sharply articulate what is the impact in terms of the experience or what do we want to stand for as a company within this field, to really identify those principles and to, you need a bit of a good creative lead there, but to be able to translate that fuzzy future vision that you have into very tangible examples in the day-to-day.
And you mentioned AR there, augmented reality.
Yeah.
For anyone who isn't familiar with the term, although I'm sure most are. How do you, so I remember AR was like such a buzz about it when it was first introduced, but it still doesn't feel like it's really kind of evolved into like really great, human experiences. So how do you sort of assess those emerging technologies like AR and go, okay, this is what we think the future of AR is going to look like.
Yeah.
And so this is how we're going to build an experience, involving that technology, or how we could adjust our experiences to take advantage of something like that. And I guess AI is another one that's very similar.
Yeah.
Like you have to think 5 years ahead, 10 years ahead to guess what that situation is going to be.
Yeah. Now, I'm quite fortunate to work at such a big company. Then you have a lot of expertise and groups inside. We have a very talented group of trend watchers and really looking at paradigm shifts in the world from any type of perspective, social, economical, but also technology. Quite often you see some predicted disruptions there as well. And I think where I'm moving towards with this build is, in the end, you always design for people. And problems are real, and you can see a little bit what are the bigger shifts coming in society, what are the challenges that we're facing. So from that perspective, I think we're all humans and we can all reflect back on what does it mean for me, what does it mean for the many people that IKEA designs for. At the same time, we also have a couple of very smart people in the team that I think have their dream jobs because they're literally just playing around with AR, trying to build cool ideas for IKEA. I cannot go too much into detail, but we have an app called Ikea Creatief, which basically allows people to scan their space and plot, almost a bit like The Sims that you played back in the days, your furniture in your space so you can see how it looks like. I mean, with the technologies that are coming, just by playing around and see what works and how does it work, you have a really fun sandbox for innovation to see how we can basically democratize interior design and help more people design their homes in a place that they feel at home.
Nice. Yes. And how do you then, you kind of mentioned at the beginning that you sort of take care of designing the experience kind of before it goes into, I guess, like a BAU, typical product cycle. Yeah. So how do you then hand over the experience to a product team?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And I think sometimes, to be very honest, a bit the headache of my job at the moment. So we just started 3 years ago, hiring 800 people. So you see sometimes also a bit like operational, how it works. There's silos. So I'm going to be honest, we hit our nose very hard to the wall the first time we bumped into this. It was really hard to hand over. I think as we repeat the processes now, I think it really helps to have a bit of a zigzag move over where you involve product at some point. For example, we're now having a value proposition, North Star. But at some point, we need to start looking at what could we do tomorrow if we want to launch an MVP, and what is maybe the subset of things that is not like future vision North Star, but could look something like a product ambition for the near-term future. So we've learned, and we're now involving more people. So again, a bit this co-create process where I think sometimes my role, frictions a bit with the product owner at that time, but I think it's a bit around knowing each other, trusting each other's capabilities, and also, from my perspective, making sure a product owner feels comfortable to take over quite a fuzzy strategic project still, to translate it into really like a product roadmap, etc.
Yeah. It's interesting because I was thinking, I would love for someone to just hand me something and go, here's all the insight, here's all here's our mission and, what the product vision and everything. But it sounds like, how do you know that it's ready to hand over? Like, is it like a product market, you've validated product market fit, or?
We have at Ikea a process following exploration cases and gates, usually more tested on that we identify the problem. So we do a lot of customer interviews. We sometimes already have bits and snippets and pieces. The other part is very much a business case. So in other words, is this a profitable, or what is the revenue model behind this? And then quite often we start handing it over. So indeed, a product owner does not get a whole wrapped value proposition there, but it's more an opportunity, a first idea of what could be possible. And I think just staying there a little bit on the side to help answer questions or sometimes help develop things more. So like, short story, I think from a business perspective and a company as Ikea, it needs to be a viable business case. You see that from the decision makers quite often. That's the main proof point. And the rest is, in my experience, a bit organic. But I think there's always a baseline of narrative. We quite often make a video or a deck to explain. And I think if you've done it more often, you quite know when you have a good story and you know a little bit which buttons to push. But I think the key decision is quite often numbers.
Yeah. So you're basically getting yourself to like a high confidence that the opportunity or the value proposition that you've created is ready to evolve.
Yeah, exactly. I usually say that we are really helping to de-risk the question, is this an interesting direction to go into and invest in, to explore further? Yeah.
And there's always a bunch more questions.
100%. It's still
then the product team
super risky. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. And before you even get to that point, I guess, I mean, these sound like they're sort of big bets, potentially like moonshots.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So with those sort of big bets and moonshots, like, how do you decide what to work on? Because obviously, in product management with prioritization, there's usually some sort of steer from customer insight or, the business objectives and things like that. But if it's higher level than that and a bit more
it's a bit more fluffy. It definitely is. It
must be much harder to prioritize as well.
Yeah, it is. And I think it's quite often, if you bump into someone that's a bit skeptical about this field, of course, at some point you want to know it 100% to really invest your money in it. But in order to innovate, at some point, you need to decide to go into a certain direction. So I don't think it's possible to give 100% security at the time we make decisions, but it also doesn't have to be, because I think innovation is also successful if we prove that a certain direction for a company is not the right one. So we know early on, let's not invest in it. It's not going to work. So I think the majority of my job is really, together with then more people that have a business background, develop a business case in terms of what could be the potential value of that area. On the other hand, I think, and that's my main responsibility, is to really draft the story. Is that new value space that we're adding to IKEA selling home furnishing, does that make sense to the bigger vision of IKEA? Can we create a strong narrative around, if we go into, for example, IKEA is now also going into energy. That's already out. You can buy solar panels, heat pumps, because it completes the home. It's the life at home that we complete. So I think not only from a business, but also from an experience perspective, we could really draft that narrative around, are we truly helping people to live their everyday life in a better manner? And then, knowing the details, you can really argument how it completes experiences, how is it a logic step towards that from more that human perspective as well? Does it fit?
Yeah.
Product people, are you ready? The word on the street is true. MTPCon London is back in 2025. We're very excited for Mind the Product's return to the Barbican next March.
Whenever I hear people talking about the best product conferences, Mind the Product is always top of the list. If you've been before, you know what's in store. Oh, that rhymes. New insights, strategies, hands-on learnings from the absolute best in the field, plus great networking opportunities. And if you're joining us for the first time, I promise you won't be disappointed.
We've got one speaker already announced. That's Leah Taryn, who you've heard on this very podcast, with more to come from the likes of WhatsApp, the Financial Times, and Google. Real people working in the field who will share real, actionable insights to level up your game as a product manager.
Whether you're coming to the Barbican in person on March 10th and 11th or tuning in digitally, join us and get inspired at MTPCon London. Tickets are on sale now. Check out mindtheproduct.com/MTPCon to find out more. Or just click on events at the top of the page. And does much of the ideas and concepts that come into your team, does it come from external data and insight, or does it come from internal teams as well?
From internal teams, a lot. We have a super strong market intelligence team and that scouting team. Yeah, it can be multiple rigors. I mean, the lady from YouTube that was speaking here today also said, let's be honest, sometimes you just have a CEO that says, I saw this on the conference and I want this tomorrow. Sometimes it's also a matter of exploring it a bit deeper and really proving whether it's a good or not a good idea. But if you do it more the organic way, I think we have a lot of really talented and very well implemented market intelligence teams. And also even maybe not even market intelligence, more spotting bigger trends, housing crisis, inflation, and translating back what does that mean to our business and the many people. So I think it's very explorative. And then next to that, if we talk about, I'm thinking external, there's also a means to keep reinventing yourself to some extent, because Ikea is such a well-known brand, and I think it will stay there for a long time. But you can kind of fall into that Kodak trap at some point, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's always healthy to keep on reinventing yourself and to get inspired. Maybe sometimes it is a trigger around AR or AI, or what could it do for our business?
Yeah.
We have these hackathons as well. So I think it's multiple triggers in a sense.
Nice.
Yeah.
So when you're assessing an idea or a concept or something, I'm making lots of assumptions about what this process looks like, but I'm assuming that at some point, there's prototyping that comes from part of that, and testing with real users.
Yeah.
Like, what's your sort of top tips for, I guess, creating and testing a successful prototype? Or not a successful prototype, successfully testing a prototype.
Yeah. Very good question. I think we sometimes also end up lately in a discussion like, what is a prototype even? Because it happened to me that we just had a small concept which immediately got hard-coded and sent out, and then you're like, no, this was not what we wanted. So I think there's different means, and I think in my role as a strategic designer, there's a lot of influencing stakeholders to make decisions. So we sometimes even refer to presentations, super clear articulations. We sometimes make a very simple, clickable PDF app that stakeholders could click through to just get the imagination. So I think internally, those are quite often a video, a little clickable UX. You just start imagining a little bit what the world looks like for internal. External, because quite often when we start building prototypes, the product is by far not finished, not at all, and quite speculative. So yeah, maybe that's not a prototype, but we usually start really validating pain points. You can do that qualitatively, you can do that quant. with questionnaires. I remember, for example, with my Philips times, when we were more looking for solution healthcare, just mirroring a physician for a day at an ER gives you 100,000 observations around what's happening, what's going wrong, what are the emotions of people. So I think therefore you narrow it more and more. And I would always say, back to how I started, to keep it as simple as possible, because quite often it blows up and you will see, especially, well, I can only speak from big organizations, but then you have a stakeholder that wants this in it and this and this, and it becomes a monster. So how to keep it small can be with just neat clickable prototypes, or sometimes even just a scenario where you sketch out a future situation and you have people respond to it is already very helpful.
And that part of people responding to it, like, how do you make sure that you're getting that right? Because I imagine there's a lot in making sure that you're setting up the scenario in the right way and asking the right questions at the right points throughout that experience.
Definitely. Yeah, we have, again, the luxury that there's like very good design research team at IKEA as well. So really trained to interview people. And I think it really depends on what you're testing. If you're starting to validate whether you have a pain point that's actually existing, loose from whatever solution you're going to target, there's certain methodologies. It's the what they say, do, and think type of thing you can poke at. Because quite often if you ask someone a question, it's hard to see, but it's better sometimes in observing or following them for a while. I think it's a lot in behaviors as well. And then framing a really good design challenge out of that, like what is actually the problem we're solving for. So I would say maybe be very careful with too quickly pushing a solution in people's face and really trying to understand what they really do feel and think by observing them or looking at their behaviors. Yeah.
Lots of questioning.
Yeah.
I feel like product managers are quite good at asking questions.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just to validate our own thinking. So it's that, trying to maybe invalidate our thinking as well.
Yeah. But I think that's sometimes the friction I have with my team and the other stakeholders as well. I think at some point we're not doing a PhD or anything, right? You work at a commercial company that has their timelines as well, and it needs to be tracked. So I think it's a bit the balance still that maybe product owners are a bit stronger at, is to at some point say, and now we need to make a decision. Yeah. And we can sometimes dream and strategize, continue something. We need to hurry it. Yeah.
Actually, that was something I was going to come back to. So obviously when you're working on projects like this, where you're trying to decide, whether it's something that you're going to invest in further. So I worked as head of innovation before as well. So I've done a little bit of this as well. And sometimes you don't get a clear, like, this is definitely a thing or this is definitely not a thing. And there's like a muddy sort of grey area and there's no clear sort of direction. What do you do? Have you experienced that or was that just me?
Yeah, my first response would be definitely sometimes something just keeps on dragging and it can have multiple reasons why you're not going into it, especially if you're in these bigger organizations for a longer period. I see like topics boomerang back in my face again every 2 years or so. I think it's really at innovation as well. At some point, it's actually happening this week at IKEA. We have twice a year where we just look at all the innovation programs. You have an X amount of budget to invest. You prioritize. So what in that sense, quite often projects get like parked.
At that point, do you think that is just like your business instinct or, the collective business instinct of like, okay, let's have a discussion about this? It's not a yes or a no, but how is everyone feeling about it?
Yeah, and I think just look at the other opportunities as well and what budget you have to invest. I think if you have the luxury as a company to keep investing in innovation, I would say do it. But I also understand at times where budgets are cut.
Yeah,
innovation is maybe not the first thing that people invest in. So I think it's a bit balancing, like what are your opportunities as a company? Yeah, I find the gray project a really hard one because usually at some point, if I don't see it, I more have the tendency to say, pull me out. I tried everything. I'm not going to find it because you need to be quite creative.
Right.
And if it starts to really... Yeah. And I'm like, maybe someone else can have a look at it with fresh eyes. So maybe this kind of muddy project, my feeling is a bit like, at some point for your feeling, is this going to be something or not? Or do I still see opportunity in this or not? So
That's another interesting point, actually, because I guess when you're working on something,
Yeah.
there must be certain projects where you're like, this is going to be amazing. I
Yeah,
love
yeah, yeah.
this thing.
Definitely.
I'm really behind it.
Definitely.
And then how do you, when you are doing that handover, which we've already said is a
Yeah.
bit tricky, but how do you kind of instill the love and the passion?
Oh gosh, yeah. I've been there, and then I'm like, can I maybe become a product owner because I cannot let go? Can I continue? Yeah, how do you instill? Well, I think it's always a little bit around personal relationships. So if you get along with a product owner really well, it's easier. Like if you're friendly, how you talk to each other, how you can find each other. I think it's also experience and trust in one another. So maybe knowing each other from work, for knowing your capabilities, respecting each other's expertise. Think more from my experience in Philips, for example, it's really when it was more a clinical space, it can be quite, you have to really have your experience and knowledge about a certain clinical field. So then you really see you become a bit of familiar face in, I'd say, an example, oncology or something. That's, you need a bit of baseline content. I think for IKEA, not to say it's super simple, everything, but home furnishing is a little bit more easier to understand for everyone what it is and how you design for that. So let it go. I mean, I'm not a product owner, so at some point people could do it better than I do, and then it's on to the next.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you have to let your babies go and flourish.
True. Or sometimes you look at what's then the next horizon of this, and then you go back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So IKEA is kind of, so well known for its design aesthetic, the branding, the products, the website, everything is so sort of IKEA.
Yeah.
What's it like working in a design team with such a strong design identity?
Yeah, it's a very interesting challenge going to IKEA Digital in the sense that it's such a well-known brand. It's quite often people ask, like, where do you work? IKEA. Oh my God, love it. So they really did that well. So you inherit a brand image that is very, very strong. They also have a lot of guidelines. They really try to protect the brand. So they're very careful with that. So in that sense, it's quite clear. But when we talk about physical versus digital, there's a real challenge in how do we translate that IKEA experience that brings a lot of joy and playfulness to an online environment, even beyond websites, or how does that translate across different touch points? And that's a bit an ongoing field. So it was quite funny in the beginning, and still, to be honest, when we kicked off with this group, quite often got the feedback when we presented future concepts, like, I miss the IKEA-ness. What's the IKEA-ness in this? And we just went back thinking. And there's obviously, I think the answer is, it's boring. It doesn't look, there is something joyful and playful. And I think there's still a lot to discover. Yeah, and maybe also, it sounds a bit boring, but maybe to standardize a little bit, to make sure that we really translate that consistent customer experience in other touch points and like outside of the stores of IKEA today as well.
When you're testing concepts, you always brand them as IKEA when you're presenting them to potential customers?
Yeah, to customers, sometimes not, because it depends. I think as we're also exploring to extend into new businesses, it means we sometimes go via partners. Yeah, then we really have to align with brand, what we're allowed to do and what not. Can be a white label sometimes, or we use the label from our partner. Quite often, if I present internally, I make it an IKEA experience. But and that really depends on where we're moving into and who's our partner.
Hanneke, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. It's been so nice hearing about your experience and
thanks for having
in
me.
strategic design.
Yeah.
It's very exciting.
Yeah.
And thank you for sharing all of your insights.
Super. Thanks for having me. Great.
The Product Experience hosts are me, Lily Smith, host by night and Chief Product Officer by day.
And me, Randy Silver, also host by night. And I spend my days working with product and leadership teams, helping their teams to do amazing work.
Luran Pratt is our producer and Luke Smith is our editor.
And our theme music is from product community legend Arnie Kittler's band, POW. Thanks to them for letting us use their track.